Hi guys. I just wanted to talk about a new movie called Oppenheimer from Christopher Nolan. And if you already saw the ratings and reviews that this movie is getting, then you probably know that this movie is good and you have to go and watch it in the cinema. But there are some things that I wanted to talk about, first impressions, and some things that you should know before going to the cinema. And first, let's start with timeline jumps. And if you saw another Christopher Nolan movie called Memento, you probably know what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when the timeline in this movie is inconsistent. For example, there are regular movies that have this timeline that starts at the beginning and it progresses accordingly and ends at the ending of the story. But there are some movies that just take a timeline and just first they show us one part, and after they show us one part, and after they show us another part. But it's not like Memento. In Memento, it's like logical. They show us like the movie progresses kind of backwards, and they show us bits of time in between. When he's talking on the phone and stuff like that. But in this movie, I think it's kind of random, but it also serves a purpose of like storytelling. For example, they show us part from the interrogation room, and they're talking about some stuff, and after that, they show this stuff like happening in like I'm not gonna say real time, but like when this stuff was happening, right? And all I'm saying is it can get a little complicated at the beginning, right? Because you're not ready for that stuff when you go to the movie. You don't expect that stuff like from the beginning, from the get-go. So yeah, it can get a little complicated, especially if you're like an average guy who is not like who's not used to these kinds of storytelling, he's not used to these kinds of movies. And yeah, it can get a little complicated. You might feel a bit lost at the beginning, but it's not like very complicated. It's just get you when you're not ready. And another thing I want to talk about about this movie is action. And this movie kind of surprised me in a good way because in this movie there's no like classic meaning of action. Like in this movie, no one's fighting, no one's chasing anyone. No one's like there was no bullet fired in this movie. They don't show any action in this movie, like in classical meaning of action. But uh, when you're watching, it feels like you're watching some kind of it's just similar feeling to watching like John Wick or something like that, action wise, right? I, I don't know how that happened. Like I don't know how they did this, but Nolan made all these like average things, like talking or like thoughts of someone, or like even I don't know, just standing there or walking, look like crazy action. Like I don't know. Mm. For example, what I'm talking about is you see some movies, action movies that feature crazy action scenes packed with good CGI, effects. But at the same time, it just feels like what's happening on the screen doesn't matter like at all. You know, it happens a lot in some Marvel movies. For example, everyone's fighting, you know, banging flashes on the screen, but you don't give an actual shit about what's happening on the screen. It just seems like it doesn't matter. Action doesn't matter, and then as a result, an outcome doesn't matter to the viewer. But in this movie, you pay attention to every detail, every movement of the characters, every word that's coming out of the character's mouth, every take in this movie, every scene is an action kind of thing. And I think it shows the ability of Christopher Nolan to capture the situation or moment on the screen like 100% and just deliver it to the viewer like in the cinema, like when it's accompanied with the visuals and audio like that, like in this movie, it's just, creates this amazing feeling of how do you say it, being involved in this. Like, you actually feel like something's happening on the screen. It's not like someone's fighting on the screen and you feel like, nothing's happening. Like, I don't care about them fighting. But in this movie, you feel like you're involved in this action, even though nothing's happening on the screen. Like they're just talking or something like that. Even the, like, interrogation scene, they just made it like some kind of, like something from the game, something you're getting involved in, like in QTE scene, you know what I'm talking about. And it just feels great. Mm, the action in this movie is crazy. You should go and watch it yourself. Another thing I want to talk about is genre of this movie. And in one interview, Christopher Nolan said this movie feels like a horror or something like that. Or his friend said that and he agreed. I don't really think this movie feels like horror, but it does have elements of horror and they are effective. Like, especially they're creating this horror effect with this audio. And I watched this movie minded in on IMAX theater, and the sound is great. Sound environment is great there, and almost all of the horror elements consist from all these screamers, like audio screamers, like sudden bang and something like that, or like ticking, uh, you know, making suspense. And they work. They actually work, and all these screamers get you when you're expecting them least, you know. And it's just great. And also, it has some elements of detective at the end, or and everything seems like in their place. It's not like they implemented something and it just feels out of place, and they shouldn't do it. No, it's not like that. Everything they implemented, like for elements from other genres, they feel good, like in their place. Also, the cast is great, the actors, and I was kind of surprised by the cast because, like, I didn't watch any of the promo materials, trailers, interviews, only like one with Christopher Nolan. But like, I didn't watch anything that could expose like whole cast for me, and I was kind of surprised in a good way by the cast because there's a lot of big actors in this movie. Actors, like, they're doing a great job as always. Cillian Murphy, and I especially liked Matt Damon in this movie. Uh, and yeah, they're doing a great job. Also, everything else is on point with this movie. Audio, as I said, I watched it at IMAX, and audio at IMAX is great. And it just, audio design in this movie is great too. All the ticks, all these sounds that build up suspense and some stuff like that. It just, uh, it, I mean, it's just on point. And visuals also. Yeah, at the beginning I thought it's kind of bit pretentious, talking about all these particles. Oh, you're someone that sees something no one sees and something like that. At the beginning, I thought it was a little bit pretentious, but like this feeling just erased after like 30 minutes, like 20 minutes of the film, and it felt great afterwards. Yeah, as I said, this movie is great and you should go and watch it. And yeah, bye.